Moin Moin to GeekSprech. Once again, here is Eric, and it's episode 50 today. And as you hear again, Alex is not with us. And I think we have to dig into why that is again. But as always, I have a very special guest today with me, and I'm super happy to welcome Didier in our podcast. So Didier, say something about yourself.
Hello, Eric. Well, I'm Didier Van Hoye, better known as Working Hard in IT, and I'm taking the opportunity to talk about Azure Virtual WAN with Eric. And I was expecting Alex as well, so I'm a bit disappointed. He's my IT pirate buddy, and I have a bit of hurt feelings now because last time he wasn't there either, right? And there was also Belgian guys who were on.
Yeah.
And is there a link here between Belgium and?
I'm not sure. So last time I was still thinking, hey, it might be because it's right after it's Fasching in German, Carnival. So maybe he's still drunk somewhere in his home office or so.
Yeah. But drunk and alone in his home office because I guess he's also in
quarantine,
social isolation,
social isolation,
something like that.
Yeah, and now, but I really agree. The thing with the Belgians, let's see. So maybe he's there in the next episode, and he can argue what happened to him.
Yeah, well, everything that goes wrong today, we'll blame on him.
That's fine. Yeah, let's do so. Let's do so. Okay, we've been talking about it already. There is still this crazy little thing going on in 2020. So I assume you're also in home office. How do you like it?
Oh, I love it. I've been working from home for 40 to 60% for over a decade, and I'm completely, let's say, equipped. I have 3 screens. I have my lab. I have hardware. I have software. I have everything I need. The only challenge is there's 2 of us now working permanently from home, so sometimes that's a bit of a scheduling issue when everybody's in a meeting. So then we try to get out into the other room and do the meeting there if possible. But other than that, actually, it works very well for me. I can concentrate. Offices, especially landscape offices, open plan offices, it's a waste of time and distractions of noise. People chatting, hanging on the phone, coming to your desk. And sometimes in IT, it's not all marketing and glossy brochures. You have to work and concentrate, actually pay attention to what you're doing,
Really? Do you pay attention sometimes?
Sometimes, yes, absolutely. It sort of helps to get a better result.
Okay, yeah.
I find in many modern offices that are supposed to improve collaboration, the concentration goes down the drain. And I must say that actually this works pretty well for me.
Yeah, I can absolutely agree on this. I also in home office I feel much more productive because in the office I'm also one of those guys like, oh, there's a guy I've not seen for a while, so hey, how are you? And let's have a chat. And then this chat is taking longer than expected, and so I'm not that productive in the office. But it's fine. Okay, but today we are also here to be kind of productive in our podcast. And as you mentioned already, we want to talk about Azure Virtual WAN. So from the name, I think everybody who is listening to us now knows it's something in Azure. It has something to do with cloud. But help us, what is Azure Virtual WAN?
Well, yeah, that's always, I find it's very hard to explain because it's a global networking service and it provides a single pane of glass. And that's the intention, to manage all your networking components that you need to put a WAN together in Azure. And that sounds a bit esoteric, of course, because it's like, don't we do that already? Yes, we do, but we really stitch it together, right? You take a piece here, a VNet there, you pair the VNet, you put some NVAs in there, you have some gateways, and then you think, okay, this is becoming messy. Let's go for the hub-spoke model, and we have a bit of a more organized way of doing things. But when that grows generically and it grows really large, it becomes a bit of a hassle to manage. You have to wonder about what SKU am I going to use? How is this going to scale? What do I do with these transitive VNet thingies? How many do I actually need? So it becomes hard, but it's basically until a year ago or something like that, it was the way to do things, but there were issues with it. Hence, Microsoft thought this needs to be done in a more efficient and a more scalable way. And hela, there we were with Azure Virtual WAN.
Okay. So actually, maybe for the people listening, just let's imagine a company having a subsidiary in Germany and a subsidiary in the US. We all know they will right now have 2 providers to connect to the cloud. Maybe in Germany, they opted in for an express route. In the US, they opted for VPN just because it was easier to set up or faster to set up. And right now, it was kind of difficult to get those things together. Is this what Azure Virtual WAN is about, to solve this issue?
It's a lot more than that, but yes, it's part of it. I mean, it becomes very easy to connect everything to anything. Actually, it's so easy it was a bit scary. because let's face it. Look, let's say you have a large Azure presence in multiple regions, and you have a lot of subscriptions or resource groups with tons of VNets. And you say, look, we're gonna do it with Azure Virtual WAN, not the old way. We're gonna do it like this now, and you hook it all up. And all of a sudden, all your branches, and with branches, when it comes to Azure Virtual WAN, Microsoft actually means site-to-site VPNs, point-to-site VPNs, express routes, so anything that connects to Azure from on-prem or something. Let's put it that way. But all the VNets, when you connect them to that to a virtual hub in an Azure Virtual WAN, everything is transitive automatically. So that's like, whoa. What do you mean? Well, any VNet can reach any VNet, and any branch can reach any VNet or any branch, even in another region. So all of a sudden, this is like, wow, this is great. It's like one giant switch. I plug everything in, and everything is connected to anything.
It's just working.
And then it's like, wow, but this is amazing. I mean, think about it. Transitive connectivity globally from everywhere to anywhere. It was like, how did you do that in the past? It was a nightmare almost.
Yeah.
Right? And now it's like, yeah, it's there. And then, of course, you have a little party. You drink and you think like, wow, my job just got easy. Until then suddenly the realization hits. What happened to my microsegmentation here?
I was about to ask that. So everyone can talk everywhere?
Well, the good news is, of course, it doesn't kill all the other ways you have of protecting your workloads, right? If you have a network security group set up and properly defined, that will still protect you. Okay. So if you have an NVA somewhere in a VNet, that will still play its role. But if you just set it up from scratch and you think like, oh, I'm going to deploy a brand new landing zone, I'm going to do everything in Azure Virtual WAN, and I'm going to put everything in there. Well, by default, if you take the defaults, everything can talk to everything. So that's maybe not what you want.
But it has one good thing: it actually works.
It does. It does, and it's not just that. It's completely transitive. If you take, of course, the right version. The basic one is not. The basic one is actually a bit of a weird one. For me, that's the one that you would use if, let's say, you have no Azure presence, but you do have multiple locations across the country or across the globe, and you want to connect them.
Okay.
Then instead of going with an SD-WAN over commercial providers, you just need an internet connection, at least to start with. You hook everything up with a little firewall appliance on those sites to your Azure Virtual WAN. And pronto, thanks to Azure, you have global connectivity between all your sites.
So is this also kind of an attack to the classical internet service providers, which are providing MPLS and stuff like this?
MPLS, I would not associate MPLS with internet per se, but
okay, sorry.
Yes, it is, because I used to be a big fan of MPLS because I knew the let's say the hellhole we were in before MPLS. So I was like, okay, this is it. But it was quite expensive, and we needed to evolve with the times. Hence also the let's say the success of the software-defined WAN, right? That came out, and everybody jumped on that bandwagon. And basically, I think in the first 12 months of Azure Virtual WAN, it was really almost positioned as the one solution. where you could just have the cheapest possible but adequate enough for your needs internet connection and do everything over Azure from there. Which makes sense, because if you talk about Azure Virtual WAN, you always have to talk about the global backbone, right? The thing with the teraflops in bandwidth that you and I don't even know what it means anymore, because it's like, how many teraflops is that, or terabytes is that? Because really, I can manage 100 gigabytes and 200 gigabytes, but once you start going over 1,000 gigabytes, you come in this realm of, I don't even know what this means anymore. And Microsoft has, of course, this huge network all over the globe. And it's actually a very good one if you want to connect sites to each other, because it's so, let's say, spread out over the world that you will always go to a Microsoft point of presence very fast via your internet connection. And from there, all your travel over the globe goes over their backbone. So that makes that connecting your sites via their backbone actually makes sense, because it's faster with less latency than you would have if you were using third-party players, because they don't have those networks. And you might be doing stupid things like going over India to get to the United States from the Middle East or something, or things like that. So they're quite well positioned to make that happen. And it's one of my main points of interest. Because I always say Azure Virtual WAN is not just for the Fortune 500, it's for everyone, even for the smallest company, or for companies with a lot of small offices, petrol stations, medical supplies, or Apotheker, how do you call it in German?
Apotheker, yeah.
Drugstores, points of sale, all that sort of stuff. If you want to connect them to your on-prem data center, you could do it over the Azure Global WAN. And if you want to move part of your workload to the cloud, well, you can do that. You already have the connectivity. You just build on top of it, create some VNets, and there you go. Okay. So it's a nice stepping stone even for companies that don't even have an Azure presence but want to get connected over the Azure backbone, and then you can take it from there. You can become a hybrid organization, and later on you can evolve to a cloud native organization if you so desire. So I think it's a nice way of starting to do networking for Azure if you don't have it. But if you already have Azure networking, you can implement it side by side and transition to it, or leave them in a sort of coexistence situation for a longer time. So you're not forced to just say, oh, I'm going to use Azure Virtual WAN, so now I have to move all my networking, everything I ever set up over the past years, immediately to it. No, you can take it easy and gradually move over. So
you said it's kind of a service for all customers. You don't have to be a big enterprise. You can even use it in small. Let's say that's the theory. What's your experience in real life? Where do you see it, or where do you use it?
I used it, for example, the moment we had an Azure presence, for example, in our own company, and when there was let's say a drive to do more in Azure and to become more, let's say, 100% cloud player over the years, they said, okay, let's look at the network, and somebody says, oh, do we have some sort of a WAN? And I said, actually, yes, we can if we want to. And that's when I said, okay, let's do this. Let's just start using Azure Virtual WAN and take it from there. And that was actually quite a nice exercise. It was a learning experience, but it was also a bit of an eye-opener, because that was right around the moment that, let's say, Corona started happening. It came on the radar screen. It was like January I started doing it. And then, well, Corona happened. And all of a sudden, Microsoft was also introducing the secure hub, so with firewall manager and with the firewall policies integrated with it, which didn't exist before. And they did a lot of things with routing, custom routing tables, etc., etc. So all of a sudden, that virtual WAN got a lot of more capabilities, just at the right moment that I started looking at it. So that was kind of okay. This is the right moment to start playing with it. And then Corona, of course, also made for a lot of companies, all of a sudden, we need to enable remote workers. And you can't throw every company in the world into the virtual desktop, right? In the cloud. Some people have other needs. Some people have still on-premises connectivity they need. But guess what? Guess what is in Azure Virtual WAN? Also point-to-site VPNs, and they scale like crazy in comparison to what you could do with, let's say, the standard gateways. And all of a sudden, this is like, yes, and it's easy. Right, it's really easy to do. It integrates with your Azure AD if you want, and yeah, you can get going. So it's all kinds of little pieces that you might already have, and now there is a significant need. Thanks to Corona, or
be careful with something like that. Thanks to Corona.
well, I mean, not thanks maybe, but at least let's put it this way. You've seen this picture, right? Who's driving digital transformation? Is it your CXO or is it COVID, right? and in a lot of places that's true.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of innovations and things where we've been discussing for years with customers. Maybe in the future we should consider. It was there in weeks, days sometimes. So it was like, okay, we do it now.
Sometimes it was there a bit too fast. Yeah.
Yeah, that also. Now they have to clean up, but that's from a consulting perspective also not that bad.
Yes, okay.
But okay, let's put this aside for now. So one thing, so because I know that we also have some people that are listening to us that maybe are a little bit cloud critic at this point. And one of the most criticisms I hear still is, but cloud is super expensive, and I assume that Azure Virtual WAN, it will have a price because they won't offer it for free. So what would you say about that? So what about the pricing? Is it expensive, and how is it priced? Do I have to pay per megabyte, or?
That's what it comes down to. But of course, Microsoft has these nice little comparisons with the competition, and they make sure they are cheaper than their competition. But of course, cheaper than the competition doesn't always mean it's cheap to you.
Yeah.
But in the end, it's like with everything you do in the cloud. If you're going to compare apples to apples, and you're going to say, well, it's 1 kilogram of apples and it costs 5 cents, and this costs 6 cents, so this is more expensive, then you might be missing the big picture, right? If you start using Azure Virtual WAN, it's a little bit more expensive than using, let's say, a standard gateway for site-to-site, but in the end, you pay for what you push through there, and that isn't that much more than you would otherwise, but all the benefits you get. For example, the automation and the integration of so many third-party vendors with their appliances for all your sites. That if you want, I've played with Barracuda, for example. I got my hands on one of their appliances, and it was kind of fun to set up a service point in Azure, just typing in the information you need in the appliance, and all of a sudden, all the configuration is done for you by the appliance.
Yeah.
So think about it. If you have 100 shops or so, or schools or whatever you want to connect, you just ship them with the appliance. You put a nice color label on it. You say red goes into the red cable and blue is for the blue cable. Just plug it in, and pronto, 5 to 10 minutes later, that site is active.
Yeah. I think that's a very important point, because I've seen some super weird network designs in the cloud over time, and also on-prem designs. And one thing what I was especially interested in was a customer that always had an F5 and a Palo Alto firewall behind each other in each location.
Yes.
and then they said, and when we do the cloud thing, we do the same. And I said, like, wow, guys, that's super expensive. And you have to do all the maintenance stuff on all those devices too. Yeah. So, and that's something you also have to take into account when you think about such scenarios.
Yeah. Well, the third party, of course, can help you there. If I mean, I'm never going to bash anybody who says, we are really super happy with vendor X or Y, and they also offer the single pane of glass, and you have you have the skill set already on board because you've been using them for many years. Go ahead, use them. But if you don't want to, and if you say I want to do it natively, well, you can. So it's you can even mix that for different scenarios. So that's it's all about choice and all about what suits you best. Of course, everything comes at a cost, and it's up to the customer to decide what's important to them. So I'm never going to bash anybody for using, let's say, third-party products, because
no, never.
There's no one solution to rule them all.
Yeah.
But the example you give of like putting, I mean, those designs are very classic, and I used to do them as well, right? You have a firewall, and the load balancer goes behind the firewall. That's an on-prem thingy. Maybe you have a load balancer with a WAF, and then maybe not. But also a lot of things are done because there is a policy, and policies tend to lead to what I call corporate inertia, because you never get fired for following the policy, right?
Yeah.
But then you come up with a nice idea. Look, wouldn't it be better if we? But all of a sudden, then you become responsible for the change, if you can even push it through. But because a lot of companies, they're very, how shall I put it? They're very ITIL driven, and ITIL in the wrong way. Okay. It's like somebody that can't cook and finds a cookbook. He will follow it to the letter, and whatever he makes in the kitchen is inedible, because he can't cook. But it's the lifeline of people without imagination or something. I don't know. And it becomes absurd. And you see that sometimes go into the cloud, and you're like, why the hell is somebody putting a firewall in front of an application gateway with a WAF, and even a NAT gateway as well? And why did you do that?
Because we did it in the past.
Because I need NAT, I need a firewall, I need WAF, and I need a load balancer. And you're like, okay, like, yes, I guess. Yeah. And the worst, of course, is if they start doing it for every application. Of course, if I was Microsoft, I would kind of like that.
Yeah, for sure. Do it.
Yeah.
You might have 2 appliances per application. That's better.
Redundant, right?
But I think that's a very, very important point that you brought up. Compare apples to apples, and that's sometimes, I think, the thing that people are missing, that you also have to put into account. What do I have to do to make it work? So the implementation thing, that's one of the things, and also what do I have to do to maintain it. We all know if I run a virtual appliance in Azure, a virtual appliance needs maintenance. It's still something that needs to be patched, that needs to be monitored, maybe needs to be backup, depending on what you're running there, and all the stuff. And hey, when there's a service, interesting.
But one of the things that you have with Azure Virtual WAN is it's all redundant for you. So you don't have to even think about what type of SKU do I need. You only have to think in terms. Let's put aside the basic edition. Let's go to the standard edition.
Forget about this.
And you have everything you want in terms of redundancy. You really don't need to worry about it. But for the rest, it's all only about scalability, and that's with those scale instances that you can say, I want to go up to this and this, and you can just increase it as you go, as you need. So this is very convenient. And if you combine that with appliances on the on-premises side, the branches, where you can say, look, I just ship a little appliance and it auto configures itself when they plug it in, and it's joined to the Azure Virtual WAN. It's like, wow, that's nice, right?
Yeah. And just a quick question at this point, you mentioned the scale units, so that's in the end defining how many connections you can make and how much throughput you can put through it, or?
Yeah, basically it is. Yeah, so that's how you pay for those scale units, and it's super easy to scale up. Let's say Corona happened. Everybody's working from home now, so we need a bit more, let's say, a bit more VPN power. Well, click.
And you're ready to go.
You're ready to go, right? I mean, like, why not? Basically,
okay.
Why not? And this is discussions I had as well. An example was like, oh, we need the developers to have access to some resources on premises, but they are not in a managed environment, so they're freelancers. So how do we do this? And I was always like, oh, let's do this via Azure Virtual WAN, and let's use some point-to-site VPNs. And then you always get into the discussion, but no, this is silly because we have a firewall on premises, so they have to connect directly to the firewall. But I'm like, wait a minute. we already have our users synced to Azure AD. Azure AD integrates with this entire story. Why not? What is so bad about making that extra hub? Okay, you're in the same country, the freelancers. Okay, it doesn't give you that much benefit, but it gives you one place where you manage and control everything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You don't necessarily have to do as much on the firewall or integrate again some new appliance with your on-premises AD to make it happen. No, actually the sync is already there. You can just set it up and start using it. So there is this way of thinking, like, how are we going to do this? And maybe you should let go of the past. But of course, you know, it's IT, and there's a lot of technical stuff in IT, but there's also a lot of, let's say, commercial interests and tradition in IT.
Absolutely, yeah.
And tradition isn't bad per se, because I'm not an Azure MVP. I'm a cloud and data center MVP. I tend to think about both worlds. Mm-hmm. And you won't hear me bash somebody that says, no, I want to be hybrid, or I have a very good reason to do things on-prem. Fine by me. I really won't bash it. I will even help.
And there are situations where I would recommend you to stay on-prem.
There we go. So there is like, it's not because I like doing things in Azure that I don't like on-prem, or vice versa. I like to keep my mindset open and just look at the problem and the value. I don't think in terms of on-prem or cloud. I say, how can we do this the best? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's one or the other, or both combined in some sort of a solution. Why not? As long as it suits the customer, it's affordable, and it delivers a value. And then you can start talking about price. Because everything is expensive if it doesn't have value.
That's right. Yeah. And sometimes it's even worth to pay a little bit more if you get more value out of it. And that's also one of the big discussions I always, and sometimes I'm a little bit upset about them, because it seems so logical to me when I have a look into what capabilities I get sometimes, and then I would be super happy to pay $5 more each month to get this capability or this value out of it. But hey, it's now more expensive than before. Yes, might happen.
Yes, but
I think our cars today are also a bit more expensive than they had been 10 years back.
Yeah, you're now using that metaphor to somebody who doesn't even have a car. So
okay, yeah, sorry. the good beer is more expensive than the bad beer.
It might be. You mean Belgian beer is more expensive than German beer? I kind of get that. I know why.
I have no opinion on that, as I don't drink beer. I won't fight about better beer in this or that country, so that's fine for me. I know that Belgian chocolate is super good. So.
Oh yes, I do have some, let's say, differences of opinion there with some Swiss MVPs, but you know.
Yeah, I heard about this from time to time.
Let's get back to Azure Virtual WAN.
So
there's also the firewall manager you have there with your firewall policies. You also have a lot better monitoring than you used to have in the past, and it's moving pretty quickly. I think this has been the year that Azure Virtual WAN has really grown and extended what it could do and what it and how you can monitor it. And it's also the place where you see the new stuff come. If you noticed recently, Bastion, the Bastion host, you can now do VNet peering. But if you look at if you look at the information, they always talk about the virtual hub, and a virtual hub, of course, is the hub of the Azure Virtual WAN.
Yeah,
and it's like, aha, so it's integrated with the virtual hub, but is there any other way to do it? And I don't think so. So maybe this is, this little thingy, the writing is on the wall, that's the new stuff is being introduced there. And at a given point, it might not trickle down anymore to the classic way of doing things in Azure.
Yeah.
So maybe slowly but surely, it's time to start looking at it. And as I said, it's very fun to do. You're going to have a blast playing with all it. You're going to have to invest some time. You do have to build a lab and put some effort and money in that, because you don't want to start messing around with this in production, especially not just like set up an Azure Virtual WAN, be happy for 6 months, and then one day decide, hey, I'm going to introduce the firewall.
Let's change it tomorrow.
Yeah, on a Monday morning, and we'll see how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Because the routing is like, maybe it's not gonna happen, or
Yeah.
not automatically, so to speak. So you have to think about it and wrap your hand around all the routing capabilities and possibilities you have. And as always, that's sometimes a bit complex. So I use a lot of paper and colors. And I always start drawing and I mind mapping really what I want to achieve. And I have to go over it a couple of times to get it right in my head. And then you can start implementing it in the lab and see, does this thing do what I think it's going to do? And it's kind of an interesting experience. So as with everything, it's like building a new firewall. You just don't pick one off the shelf, throw it on the network, turn it on and hope everything is going to work.
Sit and pray.
yeah, but it's not going to work. And you're going to be a disappointed customer, right? So
yeah, I think that's a very important point for everyone out there. I think there are a lot of features in Azure you can just activate and try out, and they won't harm you that much. They might just cost you a lot of money, but that's another story. But actually, when you go to the heart of your environment, be careful.
Yeah, be very careful. And of course, what I always have the biggest trouble with, and this is a public confession of me, is like I like figuring things out, but then you have to transform this into some sort of an operational, functional thing. And then comes the infrastructure as code, of course, and the automation. And I find that always to be the biggest learning curve. You know, how do I deploy this now with ARM templates? How do I get this to run with Azure CLI or PowerShell? And often you find some information about the one and not the other. And sometimes then I come to the conclusion that I'm now using 2 or 3 things to make it happen. And that's always my challenge. How do I streamline this? And I admit I also struggle with this. And I think everybody, if you're honest, has these moments where you think like, okay, I know what I want to do, but now how
and now let's find ways how I can go around my initial idea.
Yeah, and no, but not only that, how can I implement this and put this in a pipeline and DevOps and there's a lot of hands-on work and you know, getting a bloody nose figuring out.
I actually remember a project where we've also implemented Azure Virtual WAN, and the decision in the beginning was we put everything into an ARM template and just click deploy. Yes. And then over time, it was like, okay, we have so many changes, we just redeploy the templates over and over again. And that was the moment where Azure Virtual WAN was really kicking our ass because it's not really happy about being redeployed.
I've had some issues even with API versions that were different behind the scenes, and you couldn't remove a firewall, or stuff like that. So, but as I said, it's really changing under the hood as we speak, almost.
Yeah,
so that's not surprising. So in production, you should be a bit more conservative, and also, you know, sometimes I just have these moments where I think like, why isn't A talking to B? Because I've drawn it all out, and I'm pretty convinced they should be able to talk to each other.
It must work.
But they are not. And I'm like, and sometimes you just better walk away for a couple of days and come back to it, because at some moments you're like, you've got these blinders on, and you're like, I don't get it. and of course, there's also the ability to do things that you never realized, and you don't even know if they're supported, right? The moment I figured out, wait a minute, I can actually propagate my routes to a different hub instead of the hub I'm in. This is kind of cool, but is this even supported? and how do I find out if it is supported? Because if it's not supported, it might break next month, right? And I've designed my solution around it. Not a good idea. So it's kind of fun because it's a constant learning experience. But sometimes, of course, you just want something to just work.
That's absolutely right. But now you said, okay, so it's advised to have a lab environment and to start there before putting it into production. Let's assume I want to start Azure Virtual WAN tomorrow. I've never had it. No matter if I have Azure something or I'm a total new joiner to Azure. What should I start with? Where should I go? Should I call you and say, hey, Didier, I want to start Azure Virtual WAN, put me at the hand? Or what's the best way to get started with this whole topic?
Well, just open up your browser, your favorite search engine, and you type in Azure Virtual WAN. You in the top 3 results, you will find the landing page, the central entry point for Azure Virtual WAN of Microsoft, and start reading. And there's a lot of reading to be done, and there's a lot of videos to be watched, and there's a lot of blog posts to be consumed, and then you're gonna have to get your hands dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how you do it with vouchers or some developer subscription from your company with MSDN, just mind the budget, right? And start playing. And it's going to be a bit more expensive than just creating a little VNet with one single B series VM in there, because at least you need some VMs always, in my opinion, in every scenario, because you want to test connectivity easily. And a VM has the benefit that you have a lot of options to test connectivity, from ping to TCP ping to test network connection. You have all these nice things around in a VM. You can look at the IP address on a NIC. You can look at the routing table on a NIC. It's a convenient, let's say, piece of equipment to have around when you're doing network designs and testing. But that means that you might have a couple of VMs left and right just to test the connectivity. So as a lab, the cost can get quite expensive, and it's not the easiest lab I find to redeploy every day to save costs, because it takes a while.
Yeah. That's absolutely right.
and that's sometimes the frustrating thing, right? If I had to do this on my MSDN subscription, it's like, well, I can do 2 days a month or 3 days a month, and then I have to turn it off. And then I want to do a bit more work, and then I spend half a day or a day setting it back up again.
No. So that means there's actually also no way to say, hey, let's turn off Azure Virtual WAN. So stop it. No.
That would be great, actually, to be able to do that. To say, just leave everything as it is, just shut it down, because it's a lab. But with a lot of components and networking, you just can't do that.
Yeah, and that's right. Oh man. Okay, so I think that it was quite interesting, and actually, people, we all know Christmas time is here. We all will be in social distancing anyway, so you have a lot of time for reading, watching videos, and stuff like this. And interestingly, we should ask the Microsoft guys if over Christmas now Azure Virtual WAN usage is raising. Then we say it's because of the podcast with you, okay?
Yeah, if you want to wrap your head around the custom routing tables, I've done some presentations with lots of animations. That was at the beginning of the first lockdown in our country. I had some times on my hands at night, and I started doing PowerPoints with a zillion of arrows that were animated to show what's happening.
Wow. So you should become a PowerPoint MVP now, or
maybe as a second. Not my first, please, not my first. But I must say, after 2 or 3 of those examples, I kind of had it with drawing arrows. I really actually, I had this crazy idea because I was in sort of a Corona, fantasy or idiocy. I think I forgot how expensive a Surface Hub was, but there were a few weeks that I really had this idea. I need to get a hub so I can whiteboard at home and make videos about it.
Okay.
But I suddenly started Googling, okay, what models do we have? And I was like, oh shit.
Not today.
It sounded like a brilliant idea, but it was like, oh, I forgot that actually. It's ouch.
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit expensive. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but we're actually planning post-corona. I found some people in the communities whose companies have quite a number of those in different rooms. Mm-hmm. And if it hadn't been for Corona, we would have started videos and user group meetings, whiteboarding on a hub or something.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool idea.
That's on the track, and I think for explaining concepts, really, it's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, always. I'm most of my customers know I'm known for drawing. I'm the one who comes in the room with his own pens in his hand. I always have my own colors with me because I have seen a lot of meeting rooms with empty, and then the red color wasn't there and stuff like this. So
And you can choose between black and gray.
Yeah, I always have my own with me, so that's kind of the thing people are joking about me, but that's okay.
As long as you know that not every white wall is a whiteboard, it's okay.
Yeah, that's a lessons learned, let's say. Okay, coming back to Azure Virtual WAN for one last question, and as I know you're absolutely lover of our podcast, you might expect this question already. When it comes to Azure Virtual WAN, what would be your magical wish if you had one?
I would like two things, actually. Can I have two wishes?
Yeah, because it's short before Christmas.
Well, I would like the number of routes on the VPN to be a bit larger when it comes to the IPv2, because that's a limit a lot of people are running into. And that's me asking for them, because I don't really have that problem at the moment. But the other thing I would like is, one of the challenges is we have, if you do point to site and you want to very discriminately tell people where they can go and where they cannot go, and it differs for a lot of people where exactly they can go and where they can't go. It's a bit of a mess to manage. So I'm really hoping that Microsoft comes up with a way of delivering a solution in Azure Virtual WAN to also manage that very atomically, because I think that's something we're going to need.
Okay. Yeah, very valid wishes, I think. Let's see if they make it happen. We hope so. And maybe when it's in place, we can have the next podcast about it.
And Alex might be here.
And Alex might be here, but maybe you have to move to Germany before. I don't know. So,
so what comes first, my wishes or Alex coming back to the podcast?
I hope Alex coming back to the podcast, because actually the next episode would be our traditional Christmas episode. And if he's not there for the Christmas episode, it will be a very, very long monologue of myself, which might bore out the listeners. And also, I would be a little bit pissed on him, a little bit more than today.
But you would need a video to do that. You would have to make it a webcast. You can do a Clint Eastwood with an empty seat.
Yeah.
You can talk to the empty seat and pretend it's Alex.
That's okay. I actually, when he wrote me today that he can't make it, I actually wrote to him, "Hey, Alex, I will make me an AI version of you," as now the cognitive services in Azure allow to train your own voice, so that the speech service is talking with your voice. I just take Alex's voices out of all the podcasts, and so I can have my virtual Alex with me the next time, maybe.
There we go. He's been replaced already. Oh my God. This IT thing is getting out of hand.
Yeah, kind of. And 1 year later, we have the autonomous podcast. It's just producing itself from week to week. So
yes, it did exactly what IT is supposed to do, right? What's the most useless, expensive part here? Oh, it's us. Okay.
Oh man, perfect. Okay. Didier, it was a pleasure to have you. Thanks for sharing your knowledge, your experience, and all the things we have to know about Azure Virtual WAN. I think everybody now has to read and learn something about Christmas time. I hope you stay safe. I hope you stay healthy. That's super important these days. And I hope to speak to you soon. Thanks for being here. And to all our listeners, thanks for listening. Stay tuned and watch out for the next episode. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.